Double P podcast. Double P.
What I like to call
Double P.
What I like to call
Double P podcast.
Welcome to Irish Craic, an American reviewing the television show Dublin Murders. Today we're looking at episode 3, and it's not just me, an American, Bubba. I am proud to be joined by someone on the other side of the biggest pond ever. It's Bagga in Australia. How you doing, Bagga?
Good, Bubba. Very good.
We are diving into this third chapter, this third episode of Dublin Murders Season 1. Let's get to it right up at the top. I forgot to do it last week. Let's get to our rankings of this specific episode. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Let's go to you, Bagga. What is your ranking out of 10 for episode 3?
I would give this 9.5, what I like to call SS.
A double S?
Smoking smokers.
They've got an issue there in Dublin, don't they?
Everybody smokes. Every time you see somebody, they're lighting up a smoke.
So we're going to have to assume the guilty person doesn't smoke.
Yeah.
Makes them stand out. They're different from everybody else.
Exactly right.
Well, that's a pretty good score. Why did you like it so much?
I think there's just so much happening. So many different people that look very suspicious, including the father, the new Lexie that we see for the first time. Not sure if she's a twin sister or what. Yeah, I was just really excited because I have no idea where the story's going, but I'm really enjoying it so far.
You have a ranking identical to mine. Now, admittedly, I do it on a different scale. I like to give it 9, what I like to call triple M's out of 10.
Triple M's?
Well, that is murder mystery motifs. This show, if you like murder mysteries, it is selling out the farm. And 3 genres or styles of murder mystery seem to be all happening at once. During this episode, because there's so much business dealings at the motorway at Malin Davis, building this motorway across Ireland, I thought to myself, boy, this could be a bit like Chinatown, where all those business interests were really behind a big part of the plot. But then because this is like a small town murder mystery and the victim's family really seems off their rockers, slightly creepy, it reminded me of Twin Peaks. And yet at the third time, we're suddenly hearing about, those woods might be haunted by laughers. And I'm thinking, is this like a supernatural mystery? Like what lies beneath? What's comical is when I think about those 3 things, they all kind of have various things in common with each other and with the show. Chinatown, spoiler alert for that movie from the 70s, had some real weird family drama going on in it as well. Twin Peaks had twins, and we've got this Jessica Katie twin freak show to deal with. Plus the supernatural part, if a former police detective is getting freaked out, if Rob is having visions of wolves following him, there's something freaky going on.
There's certainly something freaky going on, and I'm dying to know what the connection with the wolves are, because there's been no mention of them except for him seeing them, so I assume that will come into it later on. But yeah, very freaky, and as you said, the so-called pathology experts in the forest asking for more policemen because they're getting scared because they're hearing all this laughter.
Oh man, it's not good. Bagga, I love that you're on here with me because there's a part of me which really, I didn't review it, but I really liked episode 2. I thought it was actually much better than episode 1. I thought maybe I was a bit too soft, a grader on episode 1. But I really liked last week's episode. I really like this one. And a part of me is wondering, I've said this on every podcast, I read the first novel, In the Woods, by Tana French. So I know this story so well. Now, of course, we are about to get into deep, not only the first novel, but the second novel, which I don't know as much. But because I read the novel, I was wondering, am I enjoying it just so much because I know how well this murder mystery is? And remind our listeners, you haven't read it, right? You haven't read either.
No, as I said, I started about the first 10 pages, enjoyed it so much, but then put it down because I didn't want to be spoilt for the TV show. As soon as the TV show finishes, I'll be picking it up and reading it straight through.
Great. Now, because I know, and admittedly they could change who the killer is, who the killers are, they could change a lot of things. What evil spirit is doing this in the TV show as opposed to the books? But because it could be similar, I'm going to bite my tongue. But I believe you, Detective Bagga, might have a suspect or two that you're thinking about, or a theory. What do you got for us?
I have a theory, and I think I've been thinking about it all morning, and it's a big theory, and I think it goes back into other TV shows.
Oh, man, I love it.
So I'll start off with Lost. Obviously, you remember Lost?
Loved it. For most of it. I had trouble with various bits of it, but loved most of it.
Yeah. Now, remember the polar bear that ate the pilot right at the start?
Oh, yes. Of course. Love it.
Then we move on to Terror, Season 1 with Toonbach.
Oh, the polar bear there. Yes. Great.
Big polar bear who actually bit off a guy's leg at one stage. Now, Toonbach, with spoiler alert, did get killed.
Yeah, he went down rough.
Yes, but the leg, I reckon, was frozen because I think it was down in a hole.
Yeah.
Now, Season 2, in one of the tents where the soldiers were sleeping.
Right, we're talking the Terror Season 2. Sorry, go on, yeah.
Yep. They found these rips in the tent, which looked suspiciously like a bear had done them. So I thought maybe son of Toonbach stopped in for a visit, did a bit of a rip, still had the leg.
Of course.
Hadn't quite thawed out yet.
Sure.
Yep. So then we now get to this show, and he rips Adam's shirt, same rip, because it looks like the same three rips.
It sure does. The pathologist, the forensic expert, has no idea what kind of knife made that cut.
Exactly. And not only that, now the leg is thawed out, so all the blood has rushed into Adam's shoes and socks before son of Toonbach has run off scared by the dogs and the people coming with the lights.
Peter, you are definitely pulling it all together. And also, maybe I should edit this out so we don't spoil anybody. This is...
Son of Toonbach has returned.
There can be only none. I love it.
Yep.
Peter has been doing a walk through some of the great television shows we've covered here at Double P Media. We love talking to you guys. Visit us on our Facebook page, facebook.com/doublephq. Twitter and Instagram, we're at Double PHQ. That's the word double, the single P, then the letters HQ for headquarters. Facebook.com/Double PHQ. Twitter and Instagram, Double PHQ. Do you have any theories? Are they more confined to this show than Bagga's theories? Let us know. I love it, though. I love all crazy things. I think the show is giving you so many options. Why not? Yeah, why not there be some evil monster out in the woods?
I'm wondering whether the people that made Lost went on to make Terror Season 1, then made Terror Season 2, and maybe they're into the show now. And they've got their little things they want to keep going.
Yeah, and finally they're allowed to do a show where everyone can smoke. They're like, nobody could smoke on Lost. There were no cigarettes on the plane. Now we can do it.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't be surprised if all the directors and all the writers all smoke non-stop.
Well, let me say that as a book reader, and listeners, have no fear, there'll be no spoils here. But if you have read that first book, In the Woods, as a book reader, I'm getting a thrill, kind of a re-thrill, the same thrill that I had in the books, about how they are layering this in, how they are allowing TV viewers to solve this. I said that as a murder mystery, I love when it's fair play, when there are clues there, when you can kind of add two and two together to figure it out. And they're doing it if it's going to have the same resolution as the book does. So I'm very excited. Write us and tell us, what do you think? What do you think of everything about the show? Give us your episode ranking. We want to talk to you. Now, Peter, are you ready?
I should have said spoiler alert before I said all that too, because obviously no one wants to watch the show now because I've given it all away.
It's going to hurt the ratings, that's for sure. Now, Bagga, are you ready to join me in this deep Bavarian woods cave to go back to 1985?
Yeah. Oh, we could do all dark jokes now if you want.
Oh, we certainly could. So let's go back to 1985, and let's look at the new pieces that we learned this week. I'll just run through 6 bullet points real quickly. Before these kids disappeared, we saw them theoretically running away from those bullies in the woods. The bullies consisted of Katie's father, Jonathan Devlin, as a kid, this cattle, I can't even say it, Cathal, who worked...
I thought it was Carl.
Yeah, I think it's Carl. It's just spelled Cathal, so it's pronounced Carl. I'm going to go with Carl, too. So there's
Carl's easier.
Right. There's Carl, who is working for the motorway project, and there's Shane, the person who, in the 2006 timeline, seems to be homeless and seems to have some slight issues. He's going around to billboards painting He Rises on him. But anyway, those people, plus Jonathan's girlfriend, teenage girlfriend, Sandra is with him. They're chasing the kids. And then later on, we see that the bully Shane, he's beginning to believe almost some supernatural stuff. He's like, hey, there's somebody here. There's somebody in here in these woods watching us, laughing at us.
Yes.
Later on, we have a slight, very short scene where the three kids, Jamie, Peter, and Adam, are there in the woods. They're hanging out with the bullies. And the bully, Carl, seems to be leering at the young girl, Jamie, and she gets creeped out by it a bit, and so she starts wiping the lipstick off that Scully had put on her earlier.
Well, I had this strange feeling that maybe Carl was actually looking at Adam instead of her.
Oh, man, I can only say what a smart, interesting comment.
Yeah, because at first I thought, oh, he's checking her out. And then when I think it was Shane or Jonathan or something, mouthed to Adam to go or run or something, he's scared that Carl's going to have a go at him. So I could be wrong, but that's what I sort of thought at the time.
Bagga, keep throwing things out. I love it. So now we do learn a couple things after the two kids disappeared. So Shane, that one who's going to grow up to be this homeless person walking the streets of Ireland, he seems in his police interviews like he wants to change his story about what went down. But then kind of freaks out, injures himself in a bathroom so he won't have to testify anymore. After this injury, he's pulled back into the cops, and suddenly he's sticking to the story that the rest of the bullies tell. We have angry citizens of this small town writing the word changeling on Adam's home, trying to get this kid to reveal what he did, what Adam theoretically did with Jamie and Peter. So they decide to peace out and say, to hell with this, we're going to go to England. And as they're trying to sneak out in the middle of the night, Jamie's mom, Alicia Rowan, is yelling at Adam, "Where's my daughter? Where's my daughter?" Tough look.
What do you think they mean by changeling? I didn't understand that at all.
Right. Well, if I understand it correctly, and let me do a quick Google search to make sure I'm not going to mess it up. A changeling it's a creature found in folklore throughout Europe. A changeling was believed to be a fairy child that had been left in place of a human child which was stolen by the fairies. So it's like a duplicate arrives, but it's not real. It's this changeling, and it's an evil changeling that's a fairy, not really a human being.
Okay. And obviously would have powers to kill and...
Right, and make kids disappear, apparently. Disappear into fairyland, maybe. Here, we're entering Jonathan Strange and Mr. Knurl territory. Every show we've covered here at Double P Media is suddenly involved into this show.
Exactly. They should pick in the right shows, that's for sure.
Hey. Alicia Rowan, we find out, is now friends with Margaret Devlin and the Devlins. And in fact, when Katie's coffin is brought through town to get ready for the funeral, Alicia Rowan, Jamie's mother, runs up to Margaret and is like, "I'm here for you. I'm here for you." She's also the person, the episode begins with somebody in 2006 calling the police tip line and breathing heavy and not saying anything. At the end of the episode, we realize it's this woman, Alicia Rowan, calling the tip line to tell him, "Hey, ask Adam what he did in the woods." Oh, love it.
Now, I don't know much about Ireland, even though my grandma was from there, but why do they have the coffin stay overnight in their house with the dead body in it? Is that a religious thing or...?
Thank you, Bagga. This is a great point. I don't want to assume, I don't want to insult possibly any real practices. So if they're doing this, that's fine. I'm certainly not going to judge. There's a part of me that also thinks that, once again, they are just setting this family up to be like a nightmare family. And what makes a better nightmare than having a coffin in the living room?
Exactly. And then sitting around and then complaining about, like the mother's complaining about it should have been a pink inside or blue inside or something. Jessica eventually yells out that she's pink and everything. So very, very strange. And even the looks they're giving each other is like something's going on there.
Peter, I don't want to pry too much. Are you married? I'll reveal a bit too much about myself. I was married, and my marriage had some rocky times, but I never argued with my wife across a coffin. Like you sit at that edge of the coffin, I'll sit at this edge, and then we'll fight. That was some strange times there in the Devlin household.
Yeah, look, I am married, but okay. I can tell you this, that I have seen way too many zombie films to have a coffin sitting in our lounge room.
Hey, why not? It makes the scene even more heightened. I actually loved it. And once again, if this is a real practice, I apologize. I'm not trying to mock anybody. But in the context of this, in the context of the show,
before,
yeah.
So, yeah.
So let's get to some of our suspects. I have to be honest. I'm not really considering Jamie's mom, Alicia Rowan, a suspect. Are you?
No, I think she's just probably just a little bit out of her mind. Probably has never got over the loss of her daughter. Mm-hmm. She lost a daughter, didn't she?
Yeah.
Or was it the son?
Jamie, yeah.
Yeah, Jamie. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think she's never got over it. I wouldn't consider her a suspect at all because I don't think she'd have the ability to do something like that.
Okay, now let's.
I think if she killed someone, it would just be a mess, and there's no way she could have that person nicely sleeping on an altar or anything. I think it would just be a total mess. So, yeah, I'd cross her off the list.
Well, let's get to some of our suspects, and we'll get to one right at the top who maybe we have to cross off as well. It's, don't call him Mark, Dr. Hanley. The archaeologist who's very particular, he got that doctor degree, you better give him his title, who had quite an episode this week. So it begins with, he's frustrated. He was frustrated when we saw him in episode 1. I want to get back to my dig. I want to get back to my work. He is creepily, in my opinion, watching the police and the forensic team do their work that night. He might be the one that they're saying, hey, get us more protection. We got creepers out at night. Then he does something that I love to do on the weekends. He gets naked in the woods and pours a bottle of wine all over himself. Good times.
Yeah, I think we all like to do that on a weekend. That's one of my hobbies.
Right, and now because I live in the big city, I just do it in public parks.
I just do it out on the nature strip because that's an easy walk home. So
he's claiming he's doing it as an offering to the king. Do you have any tree king gods or people thousands of years ago who you worship or give offerings to? I have to be honest, I don't.
No, I haven't heard of anything like that before. I mean, obviously there have been books about kings and they'll rise again and stuff like that, but this whole running around naked with wine poured over yourself in the middle of a forest is somewhat unusual. And I do like the fact that when he first looks up and sees a light and he thinks the king has come and then he realises it's two policemen shining torches and the look on his face is just priceless.
Now, as our heroes, Rob and Cassie, are interviewing him, we are reminded that this archaeologist, Dr. Mark Hanley, knows Jonathan Devlin somehow.
There was a connection there, wasn't there?
Yeah. But he apparently, and this is apparently, can be let off the hook because he gets an alibi for the night of Katie's death. And what is that alibi? One of the archaeology students, one of the two people who found Katie's body, apparently she's married, but she was having an affair with Mark, and she spent the night of Katie's murder with him. Dr. Mark Hanley currently looks like he can be crossed off the list.
Yeah, it seemed a little bit too convenient to me.
It did. It reminded me of how back in the 80s, Margaret gave a testimony that the bullies were watching that movie And they couldn't have been out the night Jamie and Peter disappeared.
Exactly. And the fact that she came in when he was being interviewed, she obviously had found out that the police had taken him, and straight away gave up the information that they were having an affair. To me, I just don't know whether I could trust them, because he, right from the word go, he had no empathy towards the dead girl at all.
None.
He just wanted to get on with his dig.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone else went to the funeral and he didn't, which was kind of odd.
Well, you know, he was preparing. He was pre-gaming for his night in the woods.
Yes.
I would say to this poor archaeology student, okay, yes, you're cheating on your husband by going out with your supervisor, Dr. Mark Hanley. But I would also warn her that Mark Hanley is cheating on her with the king. You know, she's like, I smell alcohol in your breath, and you're naked. Who were you with? I was with the king. Honey, I'm sorry. It was just, we had a night out. It was just a one-time thing. Forgive me.
It didn't mean anything. There's going to be red herrings all through this show. I wouldn't write him off just yet, because he seems very suspicious in everything he's doing.
Oh, yeah.
I'll keep an eye on him and see what happens.
Right. Maybe kind of a partially covered eye. You never know when he's going to drop his pants again. So,
yeah.
Here's to the king. It's good to be the king.
The king. Yeah, it's good to be the king. I'd like to know what the king is. I mean, is he just the king of the forest, or is he like the devil?
What if he's a fairy king who's been stealing kids and leaving changelings?
Yes.
There is trouble in River City.
Yeah. And maybe he only turns up every 33 years.
Oh, man, this is going so well. If it's okay, Peter, let's look at another person I think was a good spotlight episode as a suspect, and that is the twin Jessica. Now, Jessica, let's go through her bullet points, and then we'll talk about her. Jessica, we first see her kicking her foot and driving everybody crazy as her identical twin's coffin is there in the living room. She goes crazy because her drugged-out mom, we assume drugged-out mom, can't remember that it was Katie who liked blue, and she liked pink, so therefore the casket should have had blue lining. Later, we see Jessica in bed. She's getting read a story by her older sister, Rosalind. Again, Rosalind is having to be the mother to the younger sister because their actual mother is, high on prescription medication, I would assume. Later, Jessica tells a story of a man who said to Katie, "You're pretty. Come with me if you want to see kittens." And she describes this man as wearing running clothes. What color were they? Blue, stupid, Katie's color. What do you think of special twin Jessica?
I found this really tough to believe. To me, it just didn't sit right. Because of Jessica's, learning difficulties.
Yeah.
To just come out with a story like that, to me, it seemed a bit weird. I mean, it might be true, but I'll have to wait to see how that develops, because up until now, she's said very little.
Oh, yeah.
And what she has said hasn't made much sense. So I'm sort of wondering whether maybe she'd been coached to say that, or...
It's peculiar, I'll definitely say that. Now, the cops seem to jump on it because it seems to match the story that the male archaeologist student, Damien Donnelly, told them about a man in a tracksuit in the the infamous French blue tracksuit.
French blue tracksuit, yes.
Which the cops didn't believe that either, but now you have two people saying it, and so he definitely pricks your ears up and says, what's going on here? Why? People seem to like to get out in leisure clothes there.
Well, I mean, to me, it sounds, if it's true, then they've certainly got a suspect to look for. I just find it weird. I can't explain why. Yeah,
no, I agree. It does seem, it is a bit weird. It is possibly a red herring that you're pitching out there.
But then if she says it and the archaeological, how do you say it? Archaeological.
I don't know. I've been making it up half the time.
Oh, yeah.
Archaeologist student.
Yeah, the student says the same thing. Then obviously there must be some truth in it.
Yeah, you would assume so. There's something that they're both tuned into, and maybe they don't even realize that they're tuning into something where maybe if they squint their eyes a bit more, they might see the truth of it. But either way, we'll get to it. Is there any way? Now, this would revolve around a kid killing their identical twin. Is there any way Jessica did it? What do you think?
I think it's always possible. Obviously, Katie's getting all the attention, and Jessica's must be some sort of resentment building up over time. She might have done it accidentally, and maybe Rosalind might be trying to help cover it up for her because Rosalind's sort of looking after her, or even her dad, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good call.
But it wouldn't be the first time it's happened, but it does seem like a little bit of a cop-out to have that. Although I must admit, for a family who has just lost a daughter and they're sitting around and they have an identical twin there who's not quite all there mentally,
right?
It must be extremely hard to think about your dead daughter and think, why couldn't it have been her instead?
No.
I know it's a terrible thing to say, but
but hey, of course, you listen. You're in trauma, you're in grief. A million thoughts run through your head. All right,
the talented one gets taken away, and they're left with the not so talented one.
So let's stay in the Devlin household. Now, this next person isn't a member of the family, but she spent a lot of time in the household, and that's the ballet teacher, Simone Cameron. So it turns out she picked out the lining of Katie's casket, not her mom. Her dad seemed to defer to the ballet teacher. It turned out Simone was paying for everything, possibly all the funeral expenses. She apparently was going to pay for Katie to go to the ballet school in London. And drugged-up mom Margaret is throwing suspicion her way, saying, "You were trying to steal my daughter, trying to steal my daughter." The ballet teacher is the one who seems to reach out to the cops and tell them, hey, you need to hear this story from Jessica about this person she ran into. So any thoughts on the ballet teacher, Simone Cameron?
Well, I have to start by saying at the start of the series, I thought there may have been some sort of abuse going on between the father and the daughters.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Either one of them or possibly two or so. But then having watched that episode, I'm starting to think, is he having an affair with her?
Yeah, they had a connection. They had a connection across the casket there in the living room.
Yeah, and they had decided to do the pink and all that sort of stuff together and the casket. And so, yeah, I think there's more to her. Well, I mean, you can say there's more to everybody, can't you? So, but it's another person who's squeaky clean at the start, but then you start to wonder, well, is she squeaky clean?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. She definitely seems to have money. So my first thought is she single? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But
when she was in the rehearsal studio and Sandra turned up, and Sandra was surprised to see her, and she said, I had to make calls to the theatres that Katie was signed up for.
Right.
And I thought that maybe she could have been like disposing of evidence or cleaning out something or something suspicious. It just seems like she could have rung from anywhere to make those calls. So
yeah. All right, so let's stay in the Devlin family. We've got drugged up mom Margaret. Margaret has not been well in these 3 episodes. Her daughter died, so we're willing to forgive her. But her daughter Rosalind says that one of the reasons why she's acting up, why she's making these accusations, why she's going nuts, is it's her new pills. So she's on a new prescription. That can't be good. Is it possible drugged up mom killed her daughter and they have to cover it up? Awkward times in the Devlin household.
But it is possible because, when somebody is drugged up, things can happen. But we go back to the fact that there wasn't too many bruises and cuts and stuff on Katie, apart from one on the head, I think. And
Yeah. She wasn't Katie wasn't sexually abused, if we understand correctly.
No, and I just have a feeling like if her mum had killed, like the mother we talked about earlier, I think it would have been a bit of a mess. She would have probably smashed her head in like 30 times before anyone could have stopped her.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And also, I sort of get the feeling that she's been sort of like comatose for a long period, even though she's on new pills.
Right.
It seems to be like that it's no shock to any of the rest of her family that she's just sitting there in a daze all the time, except for when her husband tries to take the remote control from her.
Right. Yeah. Do not do that.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, do not do that. We control the remote so much when sports are on. Just hand it over every other minute.
Exactly. Unless, of course, Katie tried to take the remote control off her.
No.
Things got out of hand.
Yeah, no. Katie's body would be effed up if that had happened. Oh, boy. We're getting a bit morbid here, but that's the place you have to go when you're tracking down the case.
And when there's murders, you've got to get in deep.
Right. Listen, I'm about to have a holiday here in the States, Thanksgiving, and being around my relatives, I'm like, give me some of Margaret's pills. I need some of those. If I'm going to put up with my family, they're going to put up with me.
And give me the remote as well.
Right, yeah, exactly. Let me veg on the couch. Staying in the Devlin household, let's look at unhinged Dad. Now, Dad, you're right. He could be cheating, stepping out on his wife. There's all sorts of weird things going on with him. Rob asks him, hey, are you still in touch with Carl Mills and Shane Waters? And he wonders what this question is about. Now, admittedly, he goes upstairs to Margaret, his wife, and says, hey, they're asking about those kids in the 80s. Rob later offers up a theory that perhaps Devlin, who's been making this claim, Jonathan Devlin's been against these people building the motorway through his town. He's against it not because he hates this development, but because he's worried that the motorway going through might exhume and turn up those missing kids that he killed. That's his pitch. Jonathan, later on in the episode, seems really upset that his daughter, said Rosalind's the one who gives up the ghost, have been talking to the cops. You know, he didn't want them having cell phones, and now he's finding out, oh, wait a minute, you're talking to the cops? It didn't seem like he liked that too much.
No, he's been suspicious all the way through. I don't know what his connection or what he's hiding.
Right.
But when, I think episode 2, when they were talking, Cassie and Rob were talking to him about the phone calls. Is that episode 2 or 3? I'm trying to remember.
No, I can't remember. I do think it's episode 2. It was right after he had seen Katie in the morgue, I believe.
Yeah, and he was saying there were threats and everything, and they say, why didn't you report it? And he said it made him feel important and like a king. And
like a king.
Yeah, so...
Don't tell that to Dr. Mark Hanley. He'll be over at the house soon with a bottle of wine.
Exactly. I don't trust him at all. In fact, right. I don't trust any of the 3, Carl, Jonathan, or Shane.
Yeah, no, they were not good kids in the 80s. You wouldn't assume.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's going to be more about them as we go on, because something happened in the forest and they were there for at least part of the time.
Right.
So they must know something.
Yeah, I agree.
And if that is Shane, that's the homeless guy that's riding He Rises all the time, he obviously knows who it is that he thinks is rising.
Right, good point.
So I assume that the other 2 must know as well. And I'd like to know what they did to make him rise. Whoever it is rise. Is it putting the body there, or was that connected to them? Or
got to make an offering.
Yeah. I've got to see what happens there. What happens to Shane, or what's happened to Shane? He's just lost, basically. Just walking around painting on these signs.
No, listen, I completely agree. I was going to say, let's get through our last suspect at the Devlin house, and that's Rosalind. Yep. I didn't have too many notes about her, other than she stares out a window pretty creepy, and this sounds so terrible, but it's only because Cassie mentioned it in the first episode. As far as bra watch, I couldn't tell anything. I think Cassie, in our country, it looks like she dresses like a Quaker, is what we'd call her. Not a modern teenager, even back in 2006.
Yeah, we actually had not a Quaker, but Amish.
Oh, you had Amish,
I
okay.
suppose they're about the same, aren't they? Quakers and Amish. And look, I went back and watched episode 1 again after they had mentioned that she wasn't wearing a bra, because I wanted to see whether it was obvious.
Yeah, I couldn't tell. I'm a stupid man. I got no idea.
No, I had no idea what she was talking about. You know, I kept looking. I kept thinking, it looks normal to me.
Well, now I want
maybe there's another scene, but no.
Now I want to go watch that movie about the Amish Witness from the 80s and see if they have bras. What if this is a thing?
Exactly. It's funny that the woman picks up that she's not wearing a bra, but the man doesn't. So.
Hey, we're idiots. We deserve all the scorn we get.
Or is it just the guys go, oh, she's not wearing a bra, great.
Well, let's leave the Devlin household, thank goodness, that creepy bunch, and let's look at some of these other suspects, including, you were talking about being scorned. Is it the scorned lover, ? Sandra Scully, Jonathan's teenage girlfriend, who tells Rob and Cassie, she says, I lied to the police about not knowing them because I was trying to be nice, discreet. She claims that she and Jonathan had already broken up. They were no longer a couple by the time the kids went missing back in 85. When Rob presses her about, hey, were you pregnant? She doesn't reveal anything. She kicks him out. And so that's, I think, pretty much all we get for Sandra Scully, who is living the hard life, let's be honest. They're in Ireland in 2006.
Yeah, I think she's pretty much innocent, because I think her life is so hard, I can't see her murdering someone.
Right. I suppose what they would pitch is that she got pregnant. Maybe Jonathan pressures her to, get rid of the baby, to have an abortion. She does it. And then a short time later, Jonathan marries somebody else and gets her pregnant real quick. I'm pretty sure that was part of the story of Jonathan and Margaret, is that they had to get married quick because Margaret was pregnant, you would assume, with Rosalind. So...
Rosalind, but then you think she would have killed Rosalind.
Yeah, good point.
But they didn't seem to like Rosalind for some reason, and they loved Katie.
Right, it seemed to be like Katie was the one who brought them glory because of her ballet skills.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, so you can't write her off. Can always be more to the story. At this stage, I'd put her pretty low on the list of candidates, though, because I think her life is already so rotten that... She's the one I looked up on cast photos, and she is very, very good looking, but you look at her there and she looks absolutely terrible. So it's amazing, with makeup and hairdo and everything, they can just completely change what somebody looks like. Yeah,
I always say that they try to make me look terrible by putting makeup. It just doesn't hold, Before we get to I would still wonder, possibly one of our top suspects, let's get to Cal and the Chinatown conspiracy. So Cal, he hopped on a flight and got out of Dodge real quick when this was all going down. The threatening phone calls don't appear to be a made-up thing. They appear to be a real thing. Jonathan Devlin seems to be telling the truth because those calls came from a cell phone from this guy who's a smoker who works for Malin Davis, the company building the motorway. This guy goes in, and I'm pretty sure he calls Cal and was like, yeah, okay, we got trouble. Then, on a side tangent, Cassie's boyfriend, Detective Sam, and Quigley start investigating that motorway and where it's going to go. And Sam asks the great question, why does this place even need a motorway? Then they see the He Rises billboard that Shane has been painting, and then they go into town and try to find people to talk about it. And in this bar, nobody's telling them anything, but somebody in the bar goes out to a car and says, hey, they're asking around about the development. And so, dun, 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 forget it, Quigley. It's Ireland Town.
I must admit, the guy with the phone that keeps ringing, they keep ringing, why, he can see the number that's ringing and he knows that it's obviously the murdered Katie or
it's murdered Kate. It's Jonathan Devlin's phone.
Yeah,
you would assume that's calling him back.
Wouldn't he turn it off or dispose of it or something?
If he had a brain, yes.
And he's just walking through into the the office, and then the phone's ringing in his pocket, and he goes into the
Oh, my God.
the lift, and the phone's still ringing. And I'm thinking, gee, he's getting good reception in the lift. That's pretty good.
Well, Bagga, you are saying the exact right things. I'm thinking, this guy doesn't understand how cell phones work. They're going to be able to trace it back to him real easy.
Yeah. I just couldn't understand why he couldn't just turn it off, and then they couldn't ring him. It just seemed weird, unless he's got other people ringing on that phone.
No, good question. Now, Cal, is this kind of a typical story trope? He was a bully, he was a braggart, he was making either Jamie and or Adam feel creepy back in the 80s. What happens? He grows up to be a successful businessman who does shady business deals. What a trope.
Yeah. Is he too obvious a person to be involved in the murder?
Well, it's weird that we spent so little time with him. When we're talking about the suspects, he might be the least. You know, he's on screen for a scene, and then he gets out like I said, he hopped on a plane and left town. He was on the screen for a little bit when he saw Shane came up to him, and he's like, get lost. Lose this guy. So if he's going to become a big suspect, we need to see more of him. And now that he's back in town, our detectives, Rob and Cassie, haven't had time to check him out yet. But now that he's back in town, hopefully he'll get pulled in and we can learn more about good old Cal, the person I like to call Kath Hall, and every other attempt to pronounce his name.
Yeah, I no doubt we'll learn more about him now. And it's quite possible now he's a big wig in the development world. You know, he could have other people do a murder for him. So, yeah, you can't write him off altogether.
Right. In what I would say is that if we learn more about him, there's a part of me just based on kind of murder mystery tropes that would wonder if the actual reason for Katie really had nothing to do with the business deal, but did somehow go back to what happened in 85. You know, like we're focusing on the business deal, and then it's like, oh, yes. Wait.
I keep thinking that too, because Rob keeps saying this has to do with 85 a lot.
He does.
Everyone else just seems to think, you know, it's just Katie's murder, and he's going, no, it's to do with 85. So there has to be some sort of connection to 85. Otherwise, they couldn't have such a big red herring going throughout the entire show.
Right, unless, and let's get to it, he's my final suspect. As we go down the list of suspects, the suspicion keeps growing. It's Rob, I think, you still have to consider as a suspect in this. We don't know what happened in 85. Of the one things we do know, he was with Peter and Jamie before, during, right around when they disappeared. Yeah. Rob does a couple things, and I like him. He seems like a very likable character, but he does a couple things in this episode which don't seem cool. Number one is, wasn't me, or was the reason why he pulled Quigley up from the basement looking at those old documents, put him with Sam on that side quest, did he do it to possibly get less people looking back at those documents from 1985?
Yeah, I thought the same thing, because Quigley had minutes before told him about a box full of stuff that one of the old policemen had.
Yep.
That nobody had been through, and then it was shortly after that Quigley was back upstairs and back on the job again. And I thought, you know, is he scared there's going to be something there that he might see? So
Rob,
I can't write him off. I think, in my calculations, I think he might be 3 suspects to me.
Okay. What is another possible clue? He's having visions of wolves. Like, is this wolf him and what he's done to his friends? Is he just having a mental breakdown and somehow that's tied to it? But having visions of wolves is not the best thing to let everybody know you're in an okay space.
No, it's not Game of Thrones where you've got the dire wolves or something there. It's these are just ordinary wolves, and I don't think they're particularly nice. I did have a question for you though.
Let's hear it.
Rob's mum changed her last name to get another job.
Yep.
And Rob changed his first name to Rob.
Right.
that was his second name, and from Adam to Rob, but kept his last name. Don't you think he would have changed his last name as well?
A part of me definitely thinks yes. Another part of me thinks that, once again, there's something just going on with Rob. I want to say, once again, I think he's likable. I think it's a very good performance by Killian Scott. But the fact that, okay, you went away to England because your life in Ireland was shattered. But the fact that you would come back, the fact that you go into become a murder detective on the murder squad when it seems likely that your good childhood friends got murdered. It just seems like a very odd choice. Now, to be a cop, I would think it would raise suspicions if the background check proved that you completely changed your name. And so maybe he did it knowing that he was going to do a job that would require a background check. Once again, he's suspicious. And Rob, who I think has been relatively cool, just like the remote in Margaret Devlin, when his mom talks about wanting to go to the papers, or when she accidentally still calls him Adam, he has a bit of a friggin' freak out.
Yes, that's true. But I was thinking that when he would have applied for the police force, they would have, I assumed, wanted to see a birth certificate at some stage.
You would assume, I guess.
And it would have had Adam there instead of Rob.
Right. And is the idea that we're supposed to get that Reilly is such a common name that there are hundreds of Adam Reileys, hundreds of Rob Reileys there in Ireland, and so it doesn't prick up anybody's ears.
Yeah, that's true. And we don't know whether he started... Well, we assume he started being a policeman in England before he shifted over to Ireland.
Good point, yeah.
Yeah, because they're always talking about, we'll make an Irishman of you yet. Yeah, if he's from England and his name is Rob Reilly, it probably wouldn't raise any red flags because he's from England. So,
well, let's get to a point that you brought up that I thought was a really smart point to bring up, and that is, of everybody on this case, it's almost like Rob is the most obsessed with bringing it back to 1985. There's a good chance that I almost think any other detective would just look at it like, okay, who killed Katie? But because of maybe his brain and what happened to him as a kid, he can't let it go. So if Rob's innocent, he's once again having issues with these wolves, and he's a bit almost too focused on 85, I wonder.
I wonder if you've read the book, so you might know, but leaving that aside, if he did have something to do with it back in 1985, but then the shock of it robbed his memory of it.
Right.
And now he's scared that maybe he did have something to do with it, and that's why he's trying to find out.
No, listen, these are good thoughts. Detective Bagga is on the case. He's building some files. I love it.
Yeah.
So, okay.
You can tell I've read a lot of detective books.
No, I love it. Listen, I love it. This is what, listeners, we want you to be detectives along with us. If you haven't read, if you have read, obviously no spoilers on social media, but tell us what you like. Tell us what you like about the show through 3 episodes. And so now I've got to keep saying that I read that first book. I haven't read the second. The second book, though, is titled The Likeness. And so it feels like the sudden twist at the end of the episode is the second novel. Cassie is called to a murder scene where the murder victim has a strong likeness, almost a double of herself. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, as soon as I saw that, I thought, this is the second book coming in, which I was a bit disappointed because I was actually enjoying having Rob and Cassie working together.
Oh, yeah.
Does this mean that Cassie is going to go into that case and Rob will continue on his own?
Well, I can only say what happened in the first book, and I'm going to say it because I don't consider it much of a spoiler, but I don't remember why. I do remember Cassie did get pulled away to another case. And so the first book really is Rob's book. He's the detective on this case. The second book is Cassie's case. I could go down the list. To be honest, there are other characters on the show who are going to be focus of books down the way. I don't want to name them so you ruins the suspense if they ever get in danger. You're like, well, they can't kill them. They're the main detective in this other book. So I don't want to say that, but it does seem like there's a chance that even in the novel, she got pulled away to this case of the likeness, and that's how author Tana French was doing it. But I do remember in the novel, Cassie gets pulled away a bit. And, of course, she's really a strong partner for Rob. And so since he's having these issues, seeing wolves, being obsessed with 85, all these things, her getting pulled away in the novel is not good news. It's great news for us viewers. It's great news for us readers. But Rob suddenly having to take more and more of a responsibility and not having his great security blanket, his great friend, somebody he has great chemistry with, even if it's not really a romantic chemistry as far as we can tell, that's not going to be good, but it's going to be really good.
I always thought that she was like his common sense.
Oh, that's a good way to say it, yeah.
Yeah, he would come out with pretty wild accusations or thoughts, and she would say, "No, that's just you're going too far, Rob," or something, and bring him back down to what they had to do, type thing. Without her there, I do worry for Rob, because is he going to start going too far with his investigation into 1985, and is he going to forget about Katie getting murdered? And I know he's determined there's a connection, but I mean, what if there isn't a connection?
Well, we're going to have to see where this goes. I love the novel. Through 3 episodes, I'm very excited about it. I am going to say something that does have me a bit on pins and needles. I mentioned that because we're suddenly going to start dealing with 2 novels and 2 A storylines, some people who watched this earlier than we got a chance to would go on Twitter and say, this is getting very confusing. Also, the American television critic, the top critic for the industry trade organization Hollywood Reporter, he said he loved the series through the first 3, but then in episode 4, he thought the show started to spin out of control. So, that's Tim Goodman from the Hollywood Reporter. So we are going to have to cross our fingers that they can pull this together and they can make it work.
Well, I'm at the advantage that it's not showing here at all yet. So,
oh, wow.
There's no articles or anything about it.
No good.
I don't have to worry about ads or reviews. I just hope that holds out until the show finishes, because I know what the press is like here with shows like that, and it wouldn't be the first time that they'd give a review and actually give away the ending.
Oh, no.
Review.
Yeah, I think, to be honest...
Press here are pretty poor that way.
No, in that Hollywood Reporter review by Tim Goodman, I should point out, I think he gives away a ton of spoilers, including possibly some of the ending. So listeners, don't go looking for it unless you've read both books, because it's not good. Yeah.
And also TV magazines like TV Week. Do you get TV Week over there?
We get something very similar called TV Guide.
Well, they've made lots of mistakes, like Last Australian Survivor series, which was only on about 3 or 4 months ago. We got down to about the final 6, and they brought out their magazine for that next week.
Oh, no.
The final 3.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Oh, dear.
Oh, boy, that's bad.
And it's not the first time it's happened to... I just try to stay away from any reviews and stuff here, because they do give away way too much. Well, and even ads for shows, especially mystery shows, they tend to show you way too much in the ads, and you can almost piece together what's going to happen just from watching the ads. So I deliberately... Well, we basically don't watch free-to-air TV. You know, we get stuff from other places, and then there's no ads, so that's better.
Okay. I'm doing a quick half-ass Google search right now of when will Dublin Murders air in Australia, and it says that Dublin Murders will be in Australia for the 2020 year, but it's going to be airing on something called SBS channels. What are SBS channels?
SBS, that's a good channel. It's special broadcasting something. They have a lot of foreign stuff, like, Greek, Italian, foreign movies,
cool.
Foreign TV shows and stuff like that. But they also do have some good quality English, American shows on there. It's always worth it. The ABC and SBS are the two best networks on the TV here.
Well,
it's because they don't rely on ratings. They go on what they think are good shows.
Man, yeah. Don't you wish everybody would do that? Oh, my goodness.
Oh, yes, yeah. So you don't see all the usual rubbishy, crappy shows on those channels. You get the decent stuff. But it's a shame they'll wait until 2020, but sometimes the cable network here, Foxtel, owned by Mr. Murdoch, of course.
Oh, boy.
Gets the rights to things, and then it's a year or two before they're on commercial TV. So, anyway, we'll wait and see.
Well, yeah, sadly, Australia, you will have to wait and see till 2020 if you don't jump on the download bandwagon. Anything?
Listen, I wouldn't do that. Luckily, I've got this telepathic link with you, so what you see, I see. So,
yeah, and I apologize for some of those things.
Yes. I was going to. No, I won't ask about that.
Well, Bagga, we can't wait to hear your wonderful theories for which TV shows they encompass next week. But it's time to end this episode of Irish Crack the way we end every episode of Irish Crack, and that's with saying a Irish word, an Irish phrase. And so this week, there's one that I found that now that we're getting into possibly supernatural laughing beings there in the woods, tell them to go to hell. And the way you tell them to go to hell is, may the cat eat you, and may the devil eat the cat.
I'd like to go with one that was actually from last week.
Oh, yeah, let's hear it.
We didn't get to mention it. It's the old biddy, the neighbour in the mobility scooter. And she's talking about Sandra, and she says she was going around in a dress so short you could see what she had for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Oh.
She was a
That old biddy dropping ice colds, it all does come together. I love it.
I wonder if we'll see more of her.
We need to. I haven't put her on the suspect list, mainly because she's always talking about somebody else. If we find out something about her, she's going down. We're going to bring her in for questioning.
Maybe she has to eat some of her own scones that were apparently rock hard.
Oh, dear God, yeah, no.
She gave a tin of scones to Rob, and he handed them over to the young policeman to have, and the policeman thought, oh, I'm getting a reward.
Right, exactly. That poor thankless buddy. Well, we didn't see Superintendent Varys this week. Chief Varys, he got the week off. Yeah. He was probably still filming Game of Thrones at the time.
I would have loved to have seen Varys act like him during Game of Thrones.
Yeah, we know that the actor auditioned for the part of King Robert way back when, which went to Mark Addy. But I almost wonder if Detective Kelly is a bit like how he would have played King Robert.
I assume that's his natural voice. Is he Irish?
Oh, yeah. Well, he's definitely Irish. I don't know if he's kind of laying his accent on a bit thick, but
then it just shows you how in Game of Thrones you would never have thought he was Irish in the way he spoke.
Not at all.
English, American, I don't know what you call it, but no accent to be noticed. But boy, he really lays it on in this show, and he stills the scenes when he comes in too. I really like him.
I do too. We'll have to see him next week. Bagga, why don't you tell everybody how they can reach out to you on social media?
Yes, you can catch me on Twitter. I'm at Bagga. It's Bagga 2007.
My name's Bubba. You can find me on Twitter at Fit and Trim. That's FITTENTRIM at Fit and Trim on Twitter. Please follow the Double P Media social media accounts at Double PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/DoublePHQ. We have covered a whole lot of shows. So far, we're covering some shows also besides Dublin Murder at this exact moment, including The Mandalorian, the Star Wars TV show on Disney+, and we're covering his Dark Materials in the Dust podcast. Find them wherever you find great podcasts. And if you follow us on social media, you'll always know the crazy things we're up to. So until next week, we'll speak to you on Irish Crack.
Irish Crack. I just had a thought before we go.
Yeah?
Maybe Sergeant Varys might have something to hide. Could be another suspect.
Right. Katie was going to report him to HR, and so he said, let's kill her.
Oh, you never know. Things pop up.
No, listen, you are approaching this the right way. You have read some good detective novels. That's a smart way to think about this.
Yeah, never write anyone off. There's always a chance that something's going to come up.
Oh, yes, exactly right. We'll talk to you guys next week.